All right, guys. So this is your mini lecture for child development. This is over chapters 11 through 13. Let me just share this screen real quick. So, oh, it's going so slow tonight. I'm so happy. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. This is a mini lecture, so this is not intended to replace, 3 hours I intended to replace 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of class lecture. This is really just to give you, again, just a summary of what these chapters are about. So 11 is going to be your physical development. 12 is going to be your cognitive. 13 is going to be your social emotional. All these are middle and late childhood. As always, your physical chapter is always going to go through the obvious. If you just stop and think about this, the physical development in early and middle childhood, well, duh, they're going to get bigger. Kids are going to get bigger. Their muscles are going to grow. Their skeletal system is going to grow. They're going to have some changes in their brain that myelination is going to improve. Their motor skills are going to improve. I don't know that this isn't, some PhD level math kind of material. If you stop and think about this is logical. So there's a table about how motor skills change. Is hard, but at age 6 they can figure that out. By age 10 they can judge things. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory chapter. It talks about their nutrition, how their consumption, food consumption. As they exercise more, they're going to burn more calories, but again, we start risking then the children being overweight for children who are not active. And again, heredity, environment, those things will play into children being overweight. So there's a whole section on overweight children, childhood cancer, which, many times there are not those environmental lifestyle choices that are out there, when kids have cancer. There's diabetes. Again, diabetes 1 is an autoimmune. Diabetes type 2 is much more common. It tends to be, based on choices, but also, it can be things that happen when you are overweight, things like asthma, accidents. Accidents are the most common, are injuries are the leading cause of death, and most common is motor vehicle accidents. Many times because at this age, parents don't put their kids in a car seat, plain and simple. So car seats are certainly a problem in this age because a lot of parents don't realize that you need to eat. We also talk about learning disabilities and other things in this chapter. There's a whole thing on speech disorders and ADHD and just, all kinds of different things in that physical chapter. But again, it's nothing that's horrifically difficult. Let me pull this onto this screen. So chapter 12 is going to talk about the cognitive development. So again, remember, you're coming off of Piaget pre-operational stage, and now you're going to look at Piaget's concrete operational stage. So when you are looking at concrete operations, what the children could not do and understand in the previous age, they do now. So in pre-operations, remember, they had those limits of pre-operational thought. They didn't understand conservation. There was centration. There was the egocentrism. All of those things now flip around at this age, and now they understand. They can reverse things. They understand things. They become more logical. They're able to order things. They're what's called seriation. Then B is longer than C, so A must be longer than C, is kind of this idea of transitivity, this idea of how things are related. Just being able to order them smallest to largest or whatever is this idea of seriation that will come earlier, but then understanding the relationship will come after that. This stage is all about concrete operations, that everything is much more logical. So if you have children in the room, get them out or pause. Okay. We were able to trick them in the previous age group. We were able to, they would believe things like Santa and the Easter Bunny and, all of those things and magic. And now they know that something is there, but they're trying to be logical about it. You may get kids that are trying to be logical about how in the heck does a big fat man get down a chimney, or how do they make someone disappear with things in this age group. There's a little bit of discussion here as well about Piaget and education that, just looks at how we start to teach children. One of the biggest things that we need to understand is that this is a 7 to 11 age range. So the idea that they are going to be more logical, that things will start to make more logical sense. The things that when you are looking at information processing, one of the things now that children will start to work on is memory and their short-term and long-term memory. How do you spell a word? What are your math facts? Those kinds of things. But also just things like remembering to bring a book or remembering to charge your Chromebook or, whatever it is, trying to remember those things. You'll see teachers that will start to work with plan, remember all the things that they need to do or what needs to go home or what their homework is. They will also have to start working on memory strategies like elaboration, let me flip it here. Where's my other two? One of these days I'm gonna remember to go back and edit this. So it's always frustrating to me because things are in a different place. When we're talking about memory, one of the things that we know about memory with children is there are ways that they remember things. Sometimes they will remember things because they will repeat them over and over and over. I tend to be a visual person. So for me, I have to read things, not necessarily reading them, but I have to look at them to remember things. Elaboration, this idea that it's this evolve something to something else. When you have the idea of trying to remember the colors of the rainbow and you remember the acronym Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, violet, whatever it is. However you remember those things. Some children will remember things with song. One of the things with memory here is just understanding that there's this whole process of trying to remember things. This idea of fuzzy trace theory, that memory is better than what is a gist. One of the things that I always tell people, whether they are my junior high and high school students or they're you guys, trying to remember things word for word, if it doesn't make any sense to you, is a waste of time. If you can't explain something, you are never going to be able to remember something word for word. Now, some of you, especially my theater majors, you guys are the bomb at remembering things word for word that you may or may not understand. I can take some of my students who, especially my theater kids, who can get out there and they can remember and do Shakespeare word for word. But if I ask them to explain memory, they're stuck. That the way that you remember things is maybe going to be different than your friend, but work with your memory strategy. One of the things we know is that the autobiographical memory is much more influential. You will remember things that are important to you much more than things that are not important to you. Whether you are 7-11 children, organized information to repeat things, to understand rather than trying to memorize it, especially at this age group. I joked about, you guys that are theater kids trying to remember Shakespeare, but at this age, at 7-11, if they can explain things, it will make more sense to them when they're trying to remember as well, especially creative thinking. We get lots of kids that think about things in new ways. This doesn't mean they're wrong. We look at this idea of metacognition, knowing what you know. And sometimes we talk about that we don't know what we don't know until we don't know it. That sounds weird too, but it's all this process of how you think through things, and how you try to remember things. Their reading and writing skills, how they try to read. Is it phonics or is it whole language? We tend to lean more towards whole language, just starting to get children involved in reading and understanding, but starting to read, just throwing them in and reading regular everyday material versus trying to do things and learn words based on sound. Their writing skills will develop as well. Second language, we know that there's a sensitive period for second language. Anybody who starts second language in high school, you've missed that sensitive period, kindergarten or first grade or second grade. If you've continued with that language, you know that language much better than someone that started at freshman year in high school. So that's kind of where this chapter is going. It talks about types of intelligence, with Sternberg and this idea of analytic, creative, and practical intelligence, looking at frames of mind. Are you verbal? Are you mathematical? Spatial? I am not spatial. I can get lost with the GPS. Body kinesthetic. Are you musical or intrapersonal? What is your frame of mind? I tend to be very verbal. Where do you kind of fall in that? Oh, excuse me. And that's going to start to develop with kids at this age. So a little bit on IQ scores in there as well. Just looking at differences in standardized testing is this idea of, is the test culturally fair? If you have a child that's grown up in the inner city that, has never seen a llama, and you ask them a question about a llama, how are they supposed to know what a llama is if they've never seen a llama, if they don't know what a llama is? If you don't know what something is, you can't answer a question about it. So there's lots of things in that, that kind of look at just different things with culture, and whatnot. Your chapter 13 then is your, I'm pulling it over there. There you go, is your social emotional chapter. And again, this one is going to get into Erickson, of course, and how kids are classified. It's really looking at perspective taking, that as they start in this age group, remember in the previous age group, it was that idea of egocentrism where they were not able to see other people's perspectives. Now they will start to understand other people's perspectives a little bit more. Concept, but with self-concept comes this academic idea that, really second grade-ish, depending on the school, they're going to start to be judged on their academic ability. And one of the things that's going to happen that's going to change is they're going to go from a plus minus kind of report card to a report card with letter other. Everybody's going to know that A is good and D or F is not good. So it really plays on children's ideas of, do they feel industrious or do they feel inferior? So throughout this age group, it's really is about school. It's about how you perform involved in, because children are going to start to judge each other, but they're also going to start to compare themselves to other people. So we want them to come out of this age feeling industrious, but recognizing that they have strengths in one area, but maybe not in another, but their friend might have strengths in one area that they do. Finding those things that are the children's strengths. We talk about attachment in middle and late childhood. That comes again from back in the beginning where we talked about bullying and attachment. Now we look at, the attachment process continues, and you hope that, we know that with secure attachment, children have less anxiety, less depression, less exclusion at school among peers. But if you have some of those insecure attachment, good or bad parent, it's just some attachment issues. Coping with stress. I'm amazed every single day at the amount of stress that our junior high has. They're little, they're small children. We're talking about 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, 10, 11, 12, 13-ish, trying to cope with stress and just different things at school, anxiety that really has come up. And then finally we get into how do you think through how do you think through things? How do you think through right or wrong? And Kohlberg, I left you a link on the Canvas page about, there's a couple links to Kohlberg as well as Gilligan's ideas of moral development. Kohlberg is kind of laid out here with levels of moral development. And it's really about how you, how someone works through and judge different moral situations. So there is a video on your Canvas page that takes you to the idea of Kohlberg, and it'll take you into the video on the moral dilemma. So the Heinz dilemma. So let's see some other things that come up in this age group. Again, gender stereotypes, starting to recognize gender is very fluid. Your textbook has not caught up to that yet, but even at this age, there still can be some gender fluidity issues starting to arise. So I understand that your book is just behind that and behind in that discussion. So just some other things about gender in that chapter. This chapter isn't too bad as well for material. The end of it then talks about parents as managing who their children's friends are, because it's what you do, to giving your children that space to really grow and develop their own friendships and step families, that sort of stuff, ideas on bullying, friends and other things. So anyway, so let me do that and let me stop sharing. Okay, so that's just a really quick there we go. So that's just a really quick mini lecture on chapters 11 through 13 for your child development class. Certainly, as always, reach out if you have a question or you need some clarification on something, if I can find a video for you or something that will be helpful. Otherwise, this section shouldn't be too bad. So, all right, guys, that's all I got. So have a great day.